Beijing attacks those planning to strike over national security law, warns of black hands trying to influence Hong Kong students.
The judgment didn't consider the fact that we are protesting because of an unlawful law.
3 Demosisto members fined but spared jail over LegCo protests against National Anthem Bill. And 9 more people to be charged over last week's June 4th vigil.
Good evening and welcome. Beijing's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office is claiming students are being used as tools to derail the implementation of national security laws here.
The SAR government has also condemned civil servants who intend to join a planned strike against the laws this month.
The passage from the HKMAO came in response to Demosisto's planned strike over the national security laws. It has been pushed back to June 20th from this Sunday because of a looming tropical storm. The office described the move as a black hand reaching out to teenagers, turning students into a bomb or a tool to stop Beijing from passing the law, calling it an ill intent and cheap behavior. It also lashed out at Demosistos Joshua Wong and Isaac Cheng for adding a heavier stroke to their list of crimes. The HKMAO thinks that a number of schools have sidetracked from the right direction of one country, two systems, allowing thoughts about independence and violence to spread on campuses. It noted the city's education system must stand fast to core values such as patriotism, rule of law, self-empowerment, and tolerance, adding any word of independence and violence in schools must be gone. It added it's the duty for educational bureaus and related departments to make good use of rules to chop off this black hand reaching out to children. Meanwhile, Beijing's liaison office says education is key to nurture citizens in knowing that only one country matters when it comes to being devoted to their homeland. Its spokesman added some teaching materials have beautified unlawful violence or led students into hating China or the police, publicly twisting history and hurting the nation's bonding. With calls for civil servants to join this month's strike, the Hong Kong government has condemned those who will join. The SAR noted civil servants must be politically neutral, adding participating in the strike would affect their own reputation and the city's well-being.
Pro-democracy activists who were singled out in the criticism say Beijing's statements show no self-reflection on what caused the anti-extradition protests.
The strong remarks from Beijing come on the anniversary of violent clashes between police and protesters. Pinky Wong has that story.
Beijing is basically trying to remind Hong Kong people they are the ones who call the shots, as if a reminder to Hong Kong people that, look, last year we used tear gas against Hong Kong people. It's a physical harm, as if that was not enough. And they wish to extend their hand to a domestic issue, that is education.
Yesterday, the government announced that all primary and secondary school teachers must undergo professional conduct training. This was strongly criticized by pan-democrats.
Nowadays, young people in Hong Kong, they have independent thinking. They see what's happening to their teachers. They are just reacting to what is going on. So when a government lacks this sort of self-reflection ability, they have nobody but themselves to blame.
After the national security law, when the Hong Kong student cannot talk about any kind of political opinions but only to support the Beijing government, then there will be a lot of invitation. The teachers will no longer have the brave or no longer have the space for them to express their feelings.
Activists rejected claims that they received foreign funding.
The threat from Beijing and from those unreasonable criticism and how those pro-Beijing newspapers blame that we received funding from NED, which is misleading propaganda and fake news by the pro-Beijing authorities. And even they try to ban Demosisto, we will still continue our fight.
The Civic Party says the fear of disqualification in the upcoming LegCo election was not a reason to back down.
You asked me whether I am concerned, whether that would affect the plans of the Civic Party to participate in the Legislative Council elections on the 6th of September? My answer is a short one. Does it help? The past 23 years is really a story of treachery and deceit by the Chinese Communist Party.
Pinky Wong, TVB News.
Members of Demosisto are slamming a court ruling after several of them were fined for misbehaving in Lechco last year. Kana Chiu has more.
The case dates back to last March when 3 members of the localist party Demosisto staged a protest during a public hearing of the national anthem bill. In addition to shouting and displaying slogans, they also rushed at Martin Liao, who was chairing the meeting, scrutinizing the proposed law. Found guilty this morning of failing to behave in an orderly manner within the precincts of the Chamber of the Legislative Council, defendant Isaac Chang was disappointed but says he will not challenge the ruling.
The judgment didn't consider the fact that we are protesting because of an unlawful law. But after the national security law, actually my prosecutions will be affecting the national security. So it will be more seriously.
Adjudicating the case, Magistrate Ho Chun-yu said the defendants affected the dignity of the chamber and transcended their right to speak as members of the public. Among the 3, Ho Sao-yi faced an additional charge of common assault. This after a Lechco security guard accused a 22-year-old of knocking him down, leaving him unable to get back up. Ho was acquitted of the offense after surveillance camera footage revealed she did not have any bodily contact with the man, whose ability to walk appeared unaffected after the event. Considering the incident's limited duration and impact, the magistrate fined all 3 $1,000 each. Sparing them jail, he asked them to contribute to society in future. Kana Chiu, TVB News.
9 more people are facing charges over a June 4th candlelight vigil last Thursday. Hong Kong Alliance says its vice chairman, Chow Hang-tung, lawmaker Andrew Wan, and 4 other alliance members are facing prosecution. Another lawmaker, Leung Yu-chung, Labour Party chairman Stephen Kwok, and activist Figo Chan are also informed of the prosecution today. It comes after 4 organizers of the unapproved vigil were arrested yesterday. They're all charged with inciting people to join an unauthorized assembly. Andrew Wan blasted the move as political prosecution.
We did not make any statement in front of the police officer. How can they make sure whether we did or did not instigate anybody in the vigil? It is a very strong signal to stop the vigil annually, but I want to tell them that we will not stop and we will carry on.
Meanwhile, video app company Zoom says it regrets that some meetings involving US-based Chinese dissidents and the Tiananmen crackdown were disrupted at the request of Beijing. Zoom admits it blocked several meetings and suspended the accounts of 3 activists because of pressure from China. Among those who say they were locked out of their Zoom accounts is Li Chek-yan, organizer of the annual June 4th vigil in Hong Kong. Zoom says it has now reinstated these accounts and will not allow further requests from authorities to affect users outside of China.
The High Court has dismissed media tycoon Jimmy Lai's application to travel abroad during his bail. The 72-year-old is out on bail for allegedly intimidating a reporter at Victoria Park on June 4th, 2017. He has pleaded not guilty to 1 count of criminal intimidation and was granted bail last month with a travel ban barring him from leaving the city. This is the 2nd time Lai has applied to lift the restriction after withdrawing his first application in May. The trial is set for August 19th.
Turning away from politics, Hong Kong stocks finished lower today following a massive plunge on Wall Street that saw the Dow Jones Industrial Average lose almost 7%. Investors feared that a second wave of coronavirus infections could put the brakes on an economic recovery. The Hang Seng Index shed 0.7% to close at 24,301, its third straight day of losses. This follows more than a week of consecutive gains, but the losses are not nearly as severe as the huge 6.9% plunge experienced by the Dow, its worst day since mid-March. The loss in Hong Kong was milder because it hasn't seen massive gains. One analyst says a correction on Wall Street was inevitable.
Had a tremendous run in the stock market, the market rebounding more than 40% from those March lows. I think you've got a couple factors at play. I think one, there's certainly, ripe for some profit taking after such a strong run in a short period of time. There's also the economic realities that this is, calling this a V-shaped recovery at this point is like trying to call a no-hitter in the first inning. We have a long way to go.
Still ahead on tonight's news. Hong Kong braces for a potential tropical storm this weekend.
I should not have been there. My presence in that moment and in that environment created a perception of the military involved in domestic politics.
Top U.S. general apologizes for accompanying Trump to church after protest. And U.S. moves to sanction officials from International Criminal Court.
Welcome back to TVB News. The observatory is expected to raise the first tropical storm warning of the year.
Well, this comes as a tropical storm from the South China Sea approaches the region this weekend.
The tropical depression will intensify gradually and move towards the western coast of Guangdong in the next couple of days.
Saturday is expected to be very hot with sunny periods and a few showers and thunderstorms. Sunday will be mostly windy with showers and thunderstorms. The observatory also warned of rough and stormy seas in the coming days.
Hong Kong reported one more local COVID-19 infection from the Lek Yuen Estate cluster today. The new 58-year-old female patient is the sister-in-law of the earliest confirmed patient at the estate. She has remained in a quarantine center since the end of last month and developed a fever while waiting to go to hospital. Although she twice tested negative for the virus, her test result turned positive yesterday at the end of her quarantine. She is now in hospital and is in stable condition. LegCo's Finance Committee has approved an extra $10 billion of funding for the construction of the Sha Tin to Central Link. 30 lawmakers voted in favor for the funding proposal. 21 voted against with no abstention. This morning, pan-democratic lawmakers proposed to summon former senior management of the MTRC to the meeting, but this was voted down by the committee.
Heavy rain has battered southern regions on the mainland, causing riverbanks to burst, inundating homes and flooding farmlands. The city of Chongqing was hit hard, triggering a level 3 emergency flood response. Millions have been affected by the heavy rains in other regions, and hundreds of thousands have been evacuated. According to state media, more than 1,000 houses have collapsed. Rescue crews have been deployed across the country to save people from flooded homes and take them to temporary shelters.
Overseas, an increasing number of statues honoring figures viewed as imperialist or racist are being vandalized across the U.S., with some being decapitated by protesters.
A Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, is calling for the names of Confederate figures to go from military bases, while U.S. President Donald Trump wants them to stay. Leslie Tang has more.
Emotions ran high as protesters in Virginia beheaded 4 Confederate statues of figures deemed racists. In Florida, 7 people were arrested after they vandalized statues of 15th century explorers Christopher Columbus and Juan Ponce de Leon, who they blame for genocide. The targeting of such monuments has been ignited as the Black Lives Matter movement sweeps across the nation. It was sparked by the death of George Floyd, who died after a police officer knelt on his neck when arresting him. In Boston's North End neighborhood, a Christopher Columbus statue was also decapitated. It has since been removed from a city-owned park. But its granite pedestal still stands, and the statue will be placed in storage for the time being. Some residents have mixed feelings about the monument.
I feel it should be removed, and I feel it shouldn't be removed. I feel it's part of our country's history, whether we like it or not. And we can't erase all our history. If we don't learn from the past, we can't move forward.
Over in Washington, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the names of Confederate figures have to go from the U.S. Capitol building and military bases. This comes as a Republican-led Senate panel approved a plan that would remove the names of Confederate generals and leaders from military bases and other Pentagon assets. But U.S. President Donald Trump is still refusing to change names, such as Fort Bragg and Fort Hood.
These names are white supremacists that said terrible things about our country. This is like over 100 years after World War II. Some of these names were given to these bases. And you listen to who they are and what they said, and then you have the president make a case as to why a base should be named for them. He seems to be the only person left who doesn't get it.
Leslie Tang, TVB News.
America's top military officer says he made a mistake. In remarks to a National Defense University commencement ceremony, Army General Mark Milley says he should not have accompanied U.S. President Donald Trump on a walk through a Washington, D.C. square that ended in a photo op at a church.
I should not have been there. My presence in that moment and in that environment created a perception of the military involved in domestic politics. As a commissioned, uniformed officer, it was a mistake that I have learned from, and I sincerely hope we all can learn from it.
Milley said his presence and the photographs at Lafayette Square last week compromised his commitment to a military divorced from politics. Trump's June 1st walk through the park to pose with a Bible at a church came after authorities cleared the area of largely peaceful protesters demonstrating over George Floyd's death while in police custody. The White House has hailed it as a leadership moment for Trump, akin to Winston Churchill inspecting war damage in London during World War II.
Senior UN and EU officials are speaking out against a move to block investigations by the International Criminal Court.
U.S. President Donald Trump has authorized asset freezes and U.S. travel bans against investigators probing possible war crimes committed by American forces in Afghanistan. It's the latest attack against international organizations, treaties, and agreements the Trump administration says go against U.S. policies. Trump's executive order would block the financial assets of court employees and bar them and their immediate relatives from entering the U.S.
We cannot, we will not stand by as our people are threatened by a kangaroo court. It gives us no joy to punish them. But we cannot allow ICC officials and their families to come to the United States to shop and travel and otherwise enjoy American freedoms as these same officials seek to prosecute the defender of those very freedoms.
We expect information about alleged misconduct by our people to be turned over to U.S. authorities so that we can take the appropriate action as we have consistently done so in the past.
An ICC investigation given the go-ahead in March is probing possible crimes committed in Afghanistan between 2003 and 2014. It's also looking into alleged prisoner torture that could have involved U.S. forces and the CIA. But the U.S. Attorney General says the U.S. will investigate possible corruption within the ICC hierarchy over suspicions that Russia could be interfering in the investigation process.
This is a matter of serious concern, as you can understand, because we, as European Union, we are steadfast supporters of the International Criminal Court.
UN officials are looking into the implications for a cooperation agreement between the UN and the court approved in 2004. The Hague-based court was created in 2002 to prosecute war crimes and genocide in places where perpetrators might not otherwise face justice. The court has 123 state parties that recognize its jurisdiction. The U.S. has never been an ICC member.
That is the news for tonight. Thanks for watching.
Good night.